So there's a lot of people weighing in on the Taylor Hall sucker punch to Lyubushkin. And I think that's great. I think we need to have that conversation. We need to have that dialogue open, and we need to keep it front and center for a consistent length of time if we want anyone to do anything about it. If we want to make sure we keep attention on that problem of NHL standard of discipline, we have to keep that dialogue open and top of the bill. But if you're going to do it, if we're going to do this right, you have to be objective. You have to make sure it's for the good of all players on all teams. You have to take the homer glasses off. So if you're trying to compare the Taylor Hall punch to the Dylan Larkin punch, you got to stop right there. We're talking about a player who had a closed fist, turned around, and directly with full swing motion punched somebody in the face. And we're comparing that to a player who had an open hand in more of a reach around grabbing motion. Now, was it wrong? Yes, it's totally wrong. And we need to do something about it. But it's not on the same plane as the Larkin punch. We need to keep things in perspective. Do I think Hall should have been suspended? Yes. But I think Larkin should have been suspended for longer than he was, relatively speaking. I still think there needs to be that gap between what Hall did and what Larkin did. So now, having said that, if you're going to come at me and try and compare what Taylor Hall did to Bertuzzi, you may as well just go back on home, because I ain't answering that door. I'm not listening to that. It's not even close. We're talking about open hand grabbing motion, and we're trying to already compare that to a closed fist, full backswing, full punching motion. And then we're going to try and argue comparing that to literally weeks worth of preparation, revenge plotting. I don't think so. The action may have been close to the same, but we're not arguing about hand motion and hand positioning and force. We're arguing about weeks worth of known, publicized, plotting revenge on a player and not letting it go, even though you've already got him back multiple times in that game. And by the way, the punches weren't even close either, okay? The Bertuzzi punch was worse than the Larkin punch. So think about how far away then, relatively speaking, it is from the Hall incident. Even though you can have still frames that look very similar, we're talking about a player with a full-on punch to the back of someone's neck, driving them to the ice, and then a pile-on, okay? We're not talking about Bertuzzi trying to just grab him and let him know that he didn't like what happened. He was going after him, whether that player wanted to or not, and he drilled him squarely with a solid fist to the back of the head. That is nowhere at all close to what Taylor Hall did. So you have to be realistic if you want to be taken seriously. So now, if we look at what caused those incidents even, okay, the Lyubushkin hit on Hall. You can argue whether it was boarding, whether it was dirty or not. I understand you can argue the technicalities of that. I think it wasn't so bad. I would have not minded a minor penalty, but I don't think it deserves supplemental discipline. Other people do. But relatively speaking, whether or not you want to do anything about that, you can't compare it to the hit that Dylan Larkin was responding to. Larkin was cross-checked from behind. It was fully from behind and driven into the boards with a cross-checking motion. Whereas Hall was mid-turn, it was kind of to the side, there was side impact, there wasn't complete force to the back, there wasn't total action towards the boards. It looked bad, it was a pretty violent impact, so maybe you want to punish it, maybe you don't, but it wasn't the same as that direct, blatant cross-check to the back. Again, relatively speaking now, though, the responses actually kind of panned out because the Hall response wasn't so bad, and it was in response to a hit that wasn't so bad, relatively speaking, to the Larkin response, which was pretty bad, but it was in response to a play that was pretty bad as well. So it was expected and deserved in each situation, relatively speaking. You have to keep these things in perspective. Okay, so again, now I got people talking about the Heinola Crosscheck last night, and they want to tell me that that crosscheck to Bunting was the same as Austin Matthews' crosscheck to Rasmus Dahlin. Like, come on, people, you're not helping yourselves with that kind of talk. The Heinola Crosscheck was an attempted hockey play. It's a routine play to a lot of people. They're telling me it's clean, and there should barely have been a penalty. And I'm saying it should be a suspension. But I can hear where they're coming from when people are trying to talk about it compared to the Austin Matthews crosscheck, which was him leaving his feet and driving the stick directly into the neck. Now, I also have people trying to tell me that the Matthews crosscheck wasn't as bad as the Heinola crosscheck because Heinola's was unprovoked. It was just a person going after a player in the head for no reason. Whereas at least Matthews was cross-checked a few times, so the other guy should have known it was coming. That's just bonkers. Like, look at the actions. Compare the two actions. You have a player driving to the net and a defender desperately trying to drive him away from the net versus a player who's fed up and wants to inflict damage. It's not even in the same realm. You have to be reasonable and you have to keep things in perspective, okay? And if you're not going to do that, then we can't solve any of the problems. We're just creating more. So be realistic, be honest with yourselves, keep an open mind.